Well, good morning, everyone. Today we're going to be talking to you a little bit about the Instructional Coach Program here in Frisco and to give you an overview of what the job of the Instructional Coach is. So the Instructional Coach Program started in Frisco about 6 years ago, and a lot of our department chairs became the instructional coaches for their department. For the secondary instructional coach, their job is to help support the growth mindset and the change process here in Frisco. So in order to do that, the instructional coach will collect data, analyze the data, hold a team meeting to reflect with the teams on the data, and then create action plans and follow through with that action plan to hopefully see some change through the next collection of data. So it's just a really continuous cycle for growth and improvement that we honor here in Frisco. So you may want to know, what data do ICs collect and where do they, or how do they collect their data? Turn to page 27 in your BOK to follow along. Okay, one of the first things that you will notice on the walkthrough form, this is the walkthrough form that the ICs will use, is that in the very first section, there's no space for the teacher's name. And that is because all of the data that the IC collects is anonymous data. It's not about evaluating the teacher, it's about improvement of the team as a team together. So you can see that they can check the grade level and the subject, course, and time that they were in the classroom, but they will not be writing down the teacher's name. And then it all goes into a big pot that can be sorted by grade level and subject by campus. So you can look at data over time. And the idea is that you get at least 20 collections, 20 different class times before you try to analyze the data. So they're going to get quite a bit of data as a team so that you can make team goals together. All right, in section 1, the focus is on the curriculum, and it's whether that the objective is on target for the grade level, it's whether it's aligned with our scope and sequence in Frisco ISD, and whether it's also evident to the students. So you may have an IC that will ask the students if they know what they're doing. For all of these checks in the first part, it has to all be 100% to get exist or aligned or a yes or evident. So if we ask 4 students and 3 of them know what the objective is and knows what they're doing, but 1 doesn't, then we would check not evident. So we want every kid to know what's going on. If we click unable to determine, it's just because we didn't want to interrupt to ask the students, or we weren't really sure what was going on in the class, so we couldn't really decide if it was aligned or not. So that's for section 1. Section 2 is just focusing on the students. So we're looking at what are the students doing. For any of these, there can be multiple checks within a class period, or for the 5 minutes that the IC is in there. An instructional coach walk is only 5 minutes. So they're not going to see the whole cycle of the lesson in this 5 minutes. It's just a quick snapshot to see if we can see some trends. So they'll click a couple of different things depending on what the kids are actually doing. Now, in order to click listening, reading, speaking, writing, or none, it has to be 50% of the class or more. And you're going to find out in just a little bit about the definitions for these, because they are very specific into what you might be marking. Like writing, for example, it has to be an original thought. It can't just be copying notes off the board. That's not, while the students are writing down things, they're not actually completing a writing assignment. When we get to, you'll see class levels of engagement there. So highly engaged means typically that the teacher could walk out of the classroom and the kids would still be doing their assignment and not really need the guidance of the teacher in order to complete their activities. So they're pretty engaged. Well managed is good. It's typically what we'll see on a majority of them. And that is just the students are compliant, they're doing what you're asking them to do, there's nothing crazy going on in the classroom. And then disengaged means there's nothing going on and the kids aren't engaged in learning. Then when you get to section 3, it's focus on the instruction. So this is what the teacher is doing. You will also be able to learn more about these definitions of what coaching looks like in the classroom or modeling in the classroom later on in an activity that you're going to be doing. Identifying grouping formats. It is a little bit to do with the setup of the room, whether they're in rows or grouped together or paired, but it also is the activity going on. So just because the desks are sitting side by side and there's kids in them doesn't mean that they're doing a paired activity. So they could still be doing an individual activity. So it does depend on what the kids are actually doing. And then we don't check 3C. That would be a district-wide initiative if we trained every teacher on, say, cooperative learning strategies, and that was a focus. We wanted to collect data on that, then we would start checking that. But we don't have any of those currently in social studies. So 3C does not get checked. And then part 4, focus on the learning environment. These are just simple things like you can clearly see routines are established, materials are there, and then the models are exemplars of student work or post-it. Those would be if it is directly tied to the assignment that they're working on. So if you're doing a project and you have a possible finished project from last year that got an A, a B, or a C, and you're showing the class examples of quality work, that would get you to check on that mark. So anyway, after the IC has 20 per subject or more, then the IC will reflect on the data and then hold a team meeting to really look at it and decide as a team what your goals will be for improvement. I also want to point out that if the IC selects none, that's not always a bad thing. It just means maybe you were giving instructions and it wasn't really clear what the kids were doing at that time, or the kids weren't doing anything while you were giving instructions. And that's okay. We don't want to see that all the time. So how can this information help you in your planning? Okay, turn in your BOKs, just flip a page back to page 26, and you will see a planning for daily instruction sheet. You'll notice that a lot of these things, or pretty much all of them, are on the walkthrough form. So you and your team can sit down, and as you look at a unit as a whole, kind of use this as a tally mark. How many times have you used the textbook? How many times have you used worksheets or an activity or lab sheet? How many times have you asked the kids to speak or write? How many times have you had them in different groupings and had them working in different groupings? What level are your lessons occurring during that unit? And then how are you going to teach it? What kinds of different strategies are you using to teach the material? Or are most of your strategies discussions? It's just something to kind of reflect on your own planning instruction and make sure that we're using a variety of techniques, and then also growing where we're weak and working with each other's strengths in order to all improve as a team for student success, as it all comes down to helping students and helping them to be successful. And then the cycle repeats itself. So after you guys have a good plan, your instructional coach will start collecting data again, and then you get to sit down and reflect and see if hopefully the data changed, and then you can start working on a new goal. So that's pretty much the instructional coach through the Dana Center in a nutshell. You will also be hearing, instructional coaches can do a lot of things. They can come in and help with collaborative plannings. They will definitely be in your classrooms for walks and holding department meetings, and their primary goal, though, is to improve instruction. And we are here to support them in the curriculum department, and they're there to support you.